Hello, everyone. Um, on today's podcast episode, I'm going to talk about like cars, automatic cars, AI driven cars like Tesla. So, have you guys watched like movies like iRobot? I think it's iRobot, or is it Robots? The one with Will Smith and the robots driving. There's so many sci-fi, movies where futuristic movies where futuristic movies where the world is, now filled with like AI driven cars. And every time in those movies, do you know what happens when the world is filled with AI driven cars, automatic driven cars? Is that evil people with, power or hackers hack the car of the main character and try to use it to kill him. It happens every time. It is either the car has killed the main character, right? And then the main character somehow survives, like his mind is transported to a different body, or the AI is trying to kill the main character. So what do you think will happen in the future, right, if we all start driving AI driven cars? Do you think in this world filled with wars, violence, mass murderers, lunatics, and downright evil people, do you really think in this type of world that AI driven cars are actually a good thing? Think about it. Do you know how many governments assassinate their own citizens? Right? It's harder. It's already hard enough, depending on the person you're trying to kill. It's very, it can be very hard to kill them, right? But in the future, if everything is controlled by AI, right? Your car is controlled by AI, your house is controlled by AI, your heater is controlled by AI, like your heating in the house, your water, your electric is controlled by AI. What do you think would happen if all these things are controlled by AI and then an evil dictator starts ruling a country? Do you think that dictator won't try to, get a backdoor access to the controls of those AI, units? Your car is driven by AI, your motorcycle is driven by AI. In the future, if everything we have is controlled by AI, you would think the AI will be operating by itself, right? That's actually almost impossible. You know why? The creators, that's one of the things creators fear about AI, is that giving AI too much power over them. So as we develop more AI products, you'll realize that companies will always have like a backdoor access to shut down the AI or to control it. And these companies, if they're working in the United States, guess what? The United States can buy, the United States government has a lot of money, right? So you may think that the only people that buy companies, right? The only people that buy corporations like Tesla are regular people, businessmen, right? The government has a lot of money, right? And it has, sometimes it has nothing to do with that money. And sometimes it's actually necessary for the government to buy companies, right? For like the army, right? If the army has a supplier of, certain products, right? Certain military products. If the military products, if the company that creates that military product, right, is a for-profit company, it's like a company, the government will try to buy it. That way they control both the production process and the resources that goes into the production process, as well as the final results. It'll make it cheaper. It makes sense for them to own the company, to buy the company out in the future. It makes sense to buy the company with money. That way they can, that way they know the ins and out of the, production process. One, they can control how the company makes weapons for them. If the company is their own private company, the company can dictate how they want to, sell weapons to the government, how, what type of weapons they'll like to make. They can determine the price and all that. And there's a lot of negotiations they'll have to go through. They'll have to go through. There's a lot of backstabs that may end up occurring in the future. The company that's selling to government may decide to sell to a different government, or to to some terrorist organizations behind the government's back. And that's what you have to deal with private companies selling to the government, is that you don't know what they'll do behind your back. But if you buy the company and you own all assets of it, you can fire anybody and hire anybody on that company. It's easier for you to it's easier for everything to work out in the long run when you own both sides of a weapon manufacturing. And AI cars, AI cars, AI piloted weapons, they need the government's interventions. The government needs to have access to some of these AI powered automobiles, AI powered weapons, whether the company is private or public. You know, for example, TikTok. How what isn't it didn't the government force TikTok to sell to a U.S. company? Do you know why the government forced TikTok to sell to a U.S. company? Because the U.S. company, the government can use the excuse of protecting the country to force a U.S. company to give them backdoor access to their to their software. Why? Because it makes logical sense. If the government needs to make sure its citizens aren't being spied on, and to make how are you going to make sure the citizens aren't being spied on if you have no idea what's going on inside the company? So if the government can't buy the company out, the government will with the threat of of the U.S. citizens rights being trampled upon, with that threat of U.S. Citizens being spied on, they could be getting spied on. If TikTok is owned by a foreign company, right? TikTok install like so many different softwares, hidden trackers, man, that are spying on U.S. citizens. Even after TikTok sold, those trackers could still be there. TikTok could be sold to a U.S. company that's no different from their own inside man in the U.S. So even after, the government still has to make sure that the people that own TikTok aren't just they're not going to sell any of the users' information to some random terrorist organization, or some random enemy country, or enemy group. So they'll force TikTok to give them backdoor access behind your back, behind the back of the citizens, because this is a secret. Sometimes you have to do these things secretly, because you don't want the other people knowing that you have access to information that you shouldn't be having access to as a government. And a lot of people don't like the government, meddling in corporations. They prefer the government being, doing their own things, and then the private sector doing their own thing. They don't want government, meddling with, corporations and other private entities that have nothing to do with the government. But because of, because the government like to protect, or they use that as an excuse to, protecting the citizen, they'll force themselves to have access to the information that these private companies own. And in the future, what I'm trying to say is, in the future, right? All these AI companies, all these AI products, right, will be controlled secretly by the government. At least they'll be watched and monitored by the government. Or even worse, they'll be bought by the government. You think $1 billion is a lot of money, right? The government could create a company, right? A small company, funnel money into it right now, and buy $1 billion company overnight. The government has a lot of money. They're the one who prints money. As long as they have a good reason, they can use any amount of money they want. And one of the good reasons is protecting the U.S. citizens, which makes a lot of sense. Do you know why? If all these AI companies, right, are owned by private businesses. Let's just take it say in the United States. If all these AI companies are owned by private businesses in the United States, right? Who are you to say some of these private businesses do not hate the United States? What if some of these private businesses are owned by people, people from Iran or who are related to terrorists or who are related to, shady organizations like cartels and gangs and enemy countries? And now you're buying their AI products that could have backdoor, that could have hidden mechanisms that'll cause them to harm you. These AI, it's harder. It's so much easier for to be harmed using an AI product than it is using a regular product. You know why? The AI product could have sensors installed inside of them, right? Many AI products, like these auto driving cars, have sensors installed inside of them that that check when to explode. That monitors you and everything you do, right, while using them. Some may have more access than others. Some may have more monitors than others. For like cars, for example, driving cars have access. Have scanners that scan 360 degrees around them. Meaning these scanners, and they can scan for like, the scanners can go for a very long, the scanners, let's just say the range of the scanner is very long, they have a high range around you. So they can see a lot of buildings around you. And some of these scanners, right, know exactly what type of buildings are around you. As in, is it a clothing store? The building, is this a clothing store? Is this just a regular house? You know, the scanners can scan and realize where you're actually located. Are you located in front, next to a house? Are you located by your house? Are people around you? How many people are around you? All these little things are there for the AI powered car to notice. So if these private sector car manufacturers install, for example, a self-destruct mechanism, right? That tells the AI if there are more than 10 people around the car, right? Blow up. How is the government going to fight it? For example, let's say in the future, something like an Iranian company, right? We don't know it's an Iranian company, right? An Iranian company creates in the United States. The Iranian company, it's an Iranian owned company in the United States, starts creating AI-driven cars, right? The AI-driven cars are so great that it becomes Tesla. It goes to the level of Tesla or General Motors, where many Americans, it takes like 10 or 20 years or 40 years, right? They take their time and diligence to create a very great car and take 10, 20 years to make sure it sells to the rest of the country. And then after 10 or 20 years, they start, where many Americans have bought that car, It's so easy to take over Tesla right now or many car manufacturers. As long as you can make the car cheap enough, many Americans would rather buy it. As long as it's cheap and it's AI-driven cars, like $10,000 AI-driven car, many people would rather buy a $10,000 AI-driven car than a $40,000 non-AI-driven car. That's garbage. So a $10,000 AI-driven car with all the modern features, it may lack certain things, but it depends on how they get their products. As long as they know they have a good cheap source, or as long as the Iranian government subsidizes them behind the U.S. government's back, they can sell the cars for like $4,000. AI-driven cars, just like Teslas, for $4,000. Who won't buy a $4,000 AI-driven car just to check it out? Especially when you can get loans to pay it off. Who does just want to buy? If the Iranian government creates a hidden company in the United States, right? And starts making AI-driven cars and subsidize it, right? And then start selling for like $4,000 to $10,000 in the in the United States. The lower end version will be 4,000. The high end version will be 10,000. It starts selling it to citizens in the United States, knowing full well that each car is hidden has a hidden bomb inside of it. Each car was created so intricately that it hides a hidden bomb or a self-destruct mechanism that forces the car to drive at high speed towards a moving object. I mean, towards a still object. If these cars, if an Iranian government or a Russian government starts producing these cars, how many years do you think it would take for this car to become one of the most, one of the most driven cars in the United States, or one of the most owned cars in the United States? It's only $4,000, man. If if your daughter can't drive, right? You just buy this car. They can barely pass their driver's license. You just buy this car. They're harmful. They're dangerous to themselves every time they try to drive, right? There's so many citizens, especially the elderly, who can't really drive themselves. They can still drive, but they're getting too old to drive. Just get a $4,000 AI driven car for them. Now they don't have to worry about driving. They can make all the mistakes they want inside the car, and the car will take them safely home and back, safely to work and back, safely to the grocery store and back, safely to on a vacation and back. If they decide to go on a vacation, they don't have to take a plane anymore. You don't have to, you don't have to worry about their, you don't have to fear them, driving, to a random city or miles to random states and having to get lost, on the way. They can safely take the AI-driven car to a different state. The car will park itself, and then autofills. If it's an electric car, it'll auto find a place to refill its energy, its cells, its battery cells, and then it'll continue. The ease of use of AI-driven cars is great, man. But the problem is, it also comes with a lot of danger. And that danger is if these privately owned cars, AI driven cars, are owned by enemy corporations, right? Corporations that are owned by enemy countries. That's what I call enemy corporations. Corporations owned by enemy countries, corporations owned by the drug cartels, corporations owned by gangs, corporation owned by terrorists, any of these, and they end up producing a lot of cars for the United States, for the citizens of the United States to drive. What do you think will happen when these cars are actively watching every citizen that drives it? They're actively monitoring every citizen that drives it. These cars, that Iranian automobile company, right? It could take its time, 10 years, 20 years. It could take 20 years to make sure its cars have been owned by a vast majority of United States citizens. Because it's only cost $4,000. Most brand new cars, like $10,000 plus. A $4,000 AI-driven car that's just as good as a Tesla, who won't buy that car just to check it out? Many people won't buy a Tesla AI-driven car because they can't afford it, not because they don't want it. It's because they can't afford it. So if you give them a $4,000 car, just a cheap car for them to buy, they'll just buy it just to check it out. Why not? And if you have a hidden mechanism, a very hidden mechanism that only you guys know, as long as you guys aren't bragging about it to everybody else, it could take 100 years and nobody will ever find out what that mechanism does. And you sell those cars to the vast majority of the United States citizens. What do you think these guys could do if the government, for example, a senator drives that car, and the car recognizes that that's a U.S. senator driving that car? What do you think would happen if a U.S. senator sits in an Iranian car? The government does not know that's an Iranian owned car business. It just thinks it's a Tesla. It's just like you think a Tesla is owned by the United States. Just because it's created in the United States does not mean it's owned by the United States. These private sectors could be owned by countries outside of our country. They could, they're citizens here in the United States, right? Born citizens here in the United States who have family members ties to dictators in different countries. These are natural born citizens in the United States with ties to different countries. These natural born citizens, right? They're born here in the United States, but their family members, their cousins, their grandparents are all dictators in different countries. These nationals, these citizens could create companies right now that have ties to these Iranian governments. And as long as they figure out a way to funnel money to that person that lives here without the government ever finding out about it, for example, Bitcoin, Monero, these cryptocurrencies, as long as they use these cryptocurrencies to funnel money to this person, it's so easy for him to create a company, right? And you'll never know that that company is owned by a different by a foreign enemy country, unless the person comes out and says it, unless his family member sells him out and tells everybody that this is my cousin. We own this company. It's not his. It's ours. It's our government's. And you have to be a fool to be doing something like that, man. You have to be a real fool to do something like that. If they don't do something like that, man, that means that country, you know, it'd be almost impossible for U.S. government to actually find out what's going on until it's too late. And you know what's too late? When it's too late is when the entire U.S. government starts driving. You know, the U.S. government officials start driving these cheap cars just to test it out. Why not just buy it's only $4,000. And it's AI. Why buy $100,000 Lexus, a $40,000 Lexus, a $50,000 Lexus when you can buy a $4,000? That's just as good as a Lexus, as a Tesla. Sorry, not a Lexus. I messed up. As a Tesla, an AI driven car just like a Tesla. And it's only $4,000. The whole US will be filled with these cars. Many citizens will buy these cars. Many children of politicians will buy this car. And the worst part is this car that's AI driven will have AI sensors that could have people recognition software installed that'll scan everyone around it, right? To see whether that person is the president of the United States, that person is the senator of the United States, that person is a public figure, that person is a celebrity, that person goes against, Iran, and then guess what will happen? That AI right there, right? Since it's AI, it doesn't have to have a signal sent to it to blow up. The moment the AI recognizes its target, right? A politician, it could blow up right there. And the worst part is you think the car blew up because it was badly manufactured. It won't cross your mind unless that company starts killing everyone in a mass murder where all the cars blow up all at once. If one or two cars blow up every year and kill a politician, it won't cross your mind that this Iranian company is targeting politicians. Now would it? If this car blows up once every few years or once every few months and kills a citizen of the United States or kills a celebrity or kills a public figure, it won't cross your mind that these people are actually being assassinated by these cars. Because 90% of the cars were fine, right? So the reason why these people died, the reason why these cars accidentally killed these peoples, because of, they'll say to manufacturer's defect. They could even say the company, the Iranian company, the private company, could even blame the people driving it. They could say that people messed with it. They somehow during the because people love to customize their own cars. People like to open the cars up and check what's going on inside of it, under the hood. What is the Iranian government the Iranian company could literally blame the owner of that car when they were the one at fault. They could say the owner messed with the car's engine, the owner messed with the car's X, the owner did this, the owner did that. It's not their fault. And as long as not many people are dying every year from it, this car will go unchecked. And when there's enough people, enough important people driving this car, that company could go to the owner of that company, right? Could run back to Iran, right? And then it's and they just signal a mass explosion and blow all the cars in the United States up all at once. That's no different from a nuclear weapon. When a vast majority of the United States owns an AI driven car, right? And that AI driven car is in the hands of an Iranian owned company that the government doesn't know of. That Iranian company can at any point in time decide to just blow up all their cars as long as they have a hidden mechanism within it. Some of these hidden mechanisms are controlled by the AI itself. For example, some bombs can only appear to be bombs when certain things are added, right? Some chemicals can only be turned into a bomb when certain things are added, right? Those chemicals could still be, could be pre-installed in the car, but only when the AI decides to mix them will they be mixed. And the moment they're mixed, it'll become a weapon that could be, that could explode at any point in time. So these Iranian-driven cars, right? Iranian-made cars could install. I mean, this Iranian company could install like chemicals, explosive chemicals that aren't explosive unless they're mixed at a certain ratio, at a specific ratio that nobody knows of except themselves. And then and have a mechanism within the AI of each car to only mix those chemicals together when a certain target is around. So the U.S. government may never, even if they open the car and check every single spot of the car, right? They will never even notice that these strange chemicals that the company I've explained does this, does that, does this within the car. If the car actually there's a hidden mechanism that forces the car to mix it, and only the AI has that access to mix those chemicals together. Once the AI figures out, gets a signal, either the signal comes directly from the company itself, because many of these AI cars, right, send signals out to the company, to their own towers, to for an update, for updates and things like that. So all these AI cars requires this a signal from the Iranian company, and they'll automatically mix these chemicals together, and then at any point in time they can just a simple spark plug could ignite the chemical and blow the car up. So that's what we have to worry about. The other thing is they don't have to even do that. They don't have to even install bombs inside the car. Many of these cars themselves are these are propelled vehicles, man. These vehicles they can go up to 200 miles an hour. That thing is a speeding bullet. So they don't need to. These AI driven cars do not even need to have bombs installed inside of it. The AI driven cars themselves are weapons. At any point in time, the Iranian government can just signal to the AI, right? Just to forcing the AI to ignore all commands by its user and drive 200 miles an hour into a ditch, 200 miles an hour into the nearest tree, to accelerate rapidly into the nearest building, to accelerate rapidly into the nearest politician. For example, if these AI driven cars notice a politician in the distance, right? These AI-driven cars could be forced, could have software installed within it, a direction installed within it that if there's a politician in nearby, right, run the politician over. If there's a kid nearby, run that kid over. If there's a public building nearby, run into that public building. You see, there's so many ways to weaponize these AI-driven cars. There's so many ways to weaponize these AI-powered items in our houses because the AI become spies. The AI that were introduced into our houses become spies, and companies and many of these AI companies, AI item companies, are private companies that can be owned by terrorists, that can be owned by cartels, that can be owned by gangs, that could be owned by enemy countries. So how are we gonna make sure the citizens of our country are safe when we don't really know where these companies, who really owns these companies? Are they really do they really care about the U.S. Do they really care about U.S. citizens, or can they be bought and paid for? Can they be bought out by enemy countries? Because many of these private corporations, right? They may start out as regular U.S. companies owned by a U.S. citizen who doesn't give a crap, who will never sell out the United States in any way, shape, or form. But at some point in time, they get bought out, right? They get bought out by an Iranian government hidden in disguise as another private company. And then that Iranian government decides, right, after buying the company to fire the owner, or maybe the owner just quits. It's made a lot of money. I don't want to work. They don't want to work there anymore. They've already made their money. They made hundreds of millions of dollars or billions of dollars, and they give up. And now all that company is now in the hands of the Iranian government. What do you think will happen? That company that owns a lot of AI products that many citizens of the United States use on a daily basis now has all this power. Don't you think at some point in time they'll try to force the AI to start killing people? If you start pissing the Iranian government off, don't you think the all these AI products that are owned by U.S. citizens could be forced? All it takes is software update, and the AI will turn from a kind, gentle AI to a watchdog that's constantly watching you. That's all it takes. It's a software update, and then boom, the AI is now watching, monitoring, and looking for ways to kill you. Don't you think that's weird? But that's the future we're going with AI. Sooner or later, these AI driven cars will now be your new fear, being killed by your own car. You bought a car thinking it's there to help you, not knowing that some cartel boss owns that company that created that car. Some hidden country, enemy country owns that company that created that car. Now they're now the AI inside that car is watching you, stalking you, looking for a way to kill you every chance it gets. Don't you think there should be some sort of law to make sure these companies aren't in the hands of terrorists? Well, the worst part of it is if you allow the government to take control over these companies, right? You allow the government to watch these companies. You allow the government to take full control of the company. Is that now you have to be afraid of the government as well? If you're a politician, you have to be afraid of the government. You know why? If you go against the government, like for example, you go against the president of the United States, right? As a politician, the president of the United States could, have your AI car assassinate you. Why? Because the president of the United States could use the CIA or FBI to find a way to assassinate you using your AI, the AI products you have at home. So you have to be careful in the future with AI cars, or AI powered, items, is that the AI can watch you. It makes it easier for them to know exactly when to kill you or not. Because the AI must watch you, must monitor you. or can monitor, especially the ones that require, sensors, you know, outdoor sensors. I mean, sensors that monitor the environment. These are the more dangerous ones. The ones that monitor the environment, I mean, they can watch you perfectly. They know exactly the distance you are away from the car or from the product if it needs to explode. They know exactly who's inside the car if it's driving, because they have fish, the government has a bunch of facial recognition software. They've probably gotten that down to science, especially with the new AI going, with how AI works now. AI recognition software. They have your ID at home. They have your ID with them. You take your ID with you. You take an ID every few years. ID picture every few years. You want a passport. You need your passport or get a passport. You have to take an ID picture. So it's easier for the government, the U.S. government, to find you, and then use your AI powered, tool to kill you, especially if it has, any people recognition software is installed inside of it. It knows exactly who you are, and it could kill you at any moment. So that's the future we're going towards, man. The future we're going towards is one where we're no longer afraid of, bullets and guns. We'll now be afraid of, our AI driven cars and AI powered, items going rogue and trying to kill their owners. That's the future we're going towards. And the thing is, if the government monitors it, you have to be careful you're not dealing with a crooked government. If you have a crooked government, it's best to just let the private sector handle it. Either way, the government's, you're still gonna get killed anyways if you go against the government, especially in the U.S. I'm not saying the U.S. is more corrupt. I'm just saying other governments, they can just kill you outright without having to go through all that stress. Except many countries, outside of the U.S., if you piss the government off, if you piss the president or the leader of your country off, they can just kill you outright. They don't have to go through all this stress. They don't have to go through multiple assassination attempts. They don't have to hide the desire to kill you from you. But in the United States, it's the opposite. The U.S. government can't just kill you just because you don't like them. The U.S. president just can't kill you just because you don't like him, or just because you're a political rival. So they have to go through this back door. They have to assassinate you behind your back without people realizing they're assassinating you. And the best way to assassinate someone, you know, is something like, is when it appears like an accident. And you know what appears like an accident? You driving off, you going 200 miles an hour and killing yourself randomly on the highway. That's an accident. That happens all the time. Using an AI powered tool, and that thing blows up in your face and kills you. That's an accident. A lot of tools blow up every time all year. You just call it a manufacturer's defect, or you can just say the owner is not using the tool properly. If you use the tool properly, it won't blow up in your face. So that's the future we're going towards, man. The future where you can be assassinated by AI without you realizing it. That's the future we're getting to. So if you want to own an AI driven vehicle or an AI powered, tool in the future, you have to be careful because you don't know who owns these companies. These companies could be owned by the government, right? And if the government decides to use them to kill you, there's nothing you can do about it. Or if it's owned by gangs and cartels and terrorists, you're still falling for the same thing. If they decide to kill you, there's nothing you can do about it. The only way you can be safe is if it's owned by the government and the government is actually kind enough not to use it against you. You must have a really good government to be trusted. You have to have a really good government, a good trustworthy government, and then have them monitor these AI powered, these AI companies, these AI producing companies. Otherwise, it's only a matter of time for them to be bought out by some shady organization, some shady, government overseas, or some shady, cartel member or drug, organization, and use it against you. So that's the future we're going towards, man. Be careful of AI because something bad could happen. And there's so many movies showing us that something bad will happen. The moment the world is covered by AI, we'll have to start to fear. We'll start to be afraid of AI from then on. But right now, because there's not much AI products around, we're not afraid of AI. We don't think there's anything wrong with AI. But if you're someone like me, you have to be very careful. You know, I'm very careful with this AI thing, man. I mean, I haven't driven an AI car simply because I don't, not even because I could be killed by AI, but because I just don't trust AI to begin with. I don't think AI can malfunction on its own without anyone, sending any signal to it, and now you're dead. That's the problem with AI is that it's not a human being. Human beings make mistakes. Do you think AIs don't make mistakes? What if you're driving an AI driven car, right? And you accidentally get into an accident, right? You get into an accident on your own. You're the one that got into an accident. Or maybe the AI, or maybe it's not the AI driven car's fault. Another car bumped into you, right? And then it shifts some things within the sensors within the car get shifted or breaks without you being aware of it. And without the car being aware of it. And the car just continued driving on. You know, the car continued driving on. Maybe you take it to a repair shop. They repair the car. Everything looks fine on the outside, but on the inside, now the car is broken. There's a sensor. There are a couple sensors missing, and the car doesn't know it. It's not aware that there's a couple sensors missing, or there's a couple sensors that have gone haywire. So the car just continues driving. You continue using the car, and guess what happens? The car kills you somehow. One of those sensors malfunction while you're driving on a highway, and you end up dying. So these AI powered tools, look at this AI generated look at the AI generated images and videos. Do those things look perfect? If those things aren't perfect, even after so long, why do you think these AI driven cars are perfect? Even after all, Google, all these billion dollar companies, if all the work they've done to make it as perfect as possible, yet it's still not perfect. It still has a lot of hiccups in it. What do you think will happen? What do you think is going on with these AI driven cars? There's still a lot of hiccups on these AI driven cars. AI is not human. Maybe in like 10 years or 20 years, it'll get to the level of perfection, but it'll never be completely perfect. There will always be hiccups. Cars break, things happen. There's not a car in the world that you drive on a daily basis won't have faults, occur. There's not a single car you drive that doesn't have things happen to it. For example, the rain, the change in weather is enough to break a lot of parts in a car. Just the change in weather, going from hot to cold, from hot to cold. You need to study that. Go from hot to cold and hot to cold over and over again. Could break a lot of tools inside the car. A lot of sensors could break just from that alone. You drive your car for 5 years and now many things are going haywire inside your car and you don't even know it because the sensor that senses where something is wrong is broken inside the car. And now you're still driving a car that's broken, you don't even know it. And then you end up getting into an accident because you keep trusting that AI will always work for you. When the truth is, not a single car you drive on a daily basis will not break down over time. There's not a single car, and sometimes it's hard for you to know that something's actually wrong with a car. And now that you're giving your car to AI to drive, how are you going to know if something's not wrong with AI? How do you know if there's no software defects that only occurs like once every few years? The car looks perfect, the car drives perfect every day, but just one in 1,000 chances something bad could happen. And one of these days that bad thing happens and you end up dying from it. So you have to be careful with these AI driven cars is that you can't really trust AI that much. You always, it's one thing if it's just an AI controlled toy car. That would be great. Even if if it falls apart, it's just a toy car, there's not much your life is not in danger. Nothing bad is gonna happen to you. But an AI driven car, you're putting your life at risk to being, to getting killed, maimed, dismembered, you know. So you have to really be careful when when anything that puts your life at risk, you have to be careful with it. If it doesn't put your life at risk, who cares? AI generated images. Yes, I can. You can buy. You can sign up for these AI generated image sites and all that. There's nothing wrong with that. But when it comes to things that put your life at risk, you have to be very careful because you can die from these things. It's better to die by your own hand. It's better to drive. It's better for you to take your car and drive, right, with your own two hands and end up accidentally killing yourself than it is to put your life, than it is to give your life in the hands of an AI. You trust an AI with your own life, and then AI kills you instead. It's better to buy $100,000 car, right, that you can drive by yourself. If you accidentally kill yourself driving your own car, you can blame yourself. You're the one to blame, right? You drove drunk that day. It's your fault. But when everything was fine, you didn't drive drunk. You were you didn't drive when you were sleepy. Nothing was wrong with you, and you still died. You did nothing wrong, and you still died. Isn't that unfair? Isn't it unfair to buy $100,000 car, $40,000 car, $20,000 car, and you did nothing wrong? You drove the car perfectly. You did everything perfect. You got the oil changes. You made sure the car was always in tip-top shape. Yet the AI still malfunctioned while you were driving and killed you. Isn't that unfair that you did everything right and you still died? You did everything right and you still died. That's the future you're going to be buying in your car, an AI car, is that you did nothing wrong and the car still killed you. That's the future we're going to. So you have to be careful with AI-driven cars. But that's it. That's the episode for today. That's the podcast episode for today. I'll talk to you guys later. See ya. Bye.